Hello, everyone, and welcome to the special webinar on the future of online interactions hosted by Veracitiz. Veracitiz is an IBM exclusive business partner formed with the vision of delivering high value data, AI, and analytics initiatives. My name is Roscoe Lobo. I'm a leader for data and AI with Veracitiz, and I have with me today Satyajit Garewal, who is our SME for Watson AI. A few items of housekeeping. There will be no voice interaction from the other attendees. You may kindly wait on mute. If there are any questions, you could please place them in the chat window and they will be addressed at the end of the demo. We are witnessing a watershed moment for humanity. We are seeing a crisis unlike any other. We could probably compare it to the Spanish flu or to the financial market crash or the dot-com bubble burst. And we are witnessing a change in the way people are functioning from home and the way people are, most importantly, interacting. To take an example of ourselves, we are probably connected to this webinar using a laptop while replying to certain work related messages on the phone, while we have our kids attending their online lectures on a tablet. And this goes to say that customer preferences are changing. The way customers communicate or interact with businesses are changing. And therefore, for most organizations, especially banks and financial institutions, considering a lot of the customers are millennials, it's important to pay attention to these trends. And what we see as a result is 80% of customers now are considering their experience with a company to be as important as the product, whereas a quarter of them would even pay more for better service. And therefore, customer experience is becoming an important pillar of the fourth industrial revolution. Customers' expectations are high. They are wanting faster responses from the organization. They are wanting 24/7 availability, the flexibility to reach out at any point in time. They are wanting the information they receive to be accurate, as also they are looking for a platform that serves as a soundboard or a channel for providing feedback. While we understand what the customers are expecting and how important customer service is to the vitality of any business organization, let's take a look at the channels that are available as of today. Depending on the mode of preference of communication, the complexity of the query that needs to be answered, and the answering channel, there are three different options. First, if the customer prefers to use a mobile phone with a low query complexity, the preferred channel of communication today is IVR, or interactive voice response. If the customer prefers to use either a laptop, a tablet, or a mobile, and if the query complexity is high, what happens today is we route that query to a customer service representative. Whereas there is a new middle ground where, irrespective of mode of communication and query complexity being mediocre, a traditional chatbot is a sought after solution. But there are challenges that come with all three of them. The IVR places you on hold for extended periods of time. It's pre trained to answer only a certain set of questions. Whereas a customer service rep is an expensive option. It ranges between $10 in developing nations to $30 an hour in developed countries. A traditional chatbot is a very simplified example of the potential that the chatbot as a platform holds. And therefore, it's not able to be flexible with regards to query complexity. Again, there's a lot more statistics around this to support why chat is the preferred mode of communication. Research states that 70% of people or 70% of customers prefer messaging over calling. 64% of them prefer real-time responses, again adding to the fact of them not wanting to have high waiting times.
Yes, we.
Excuse me, may I please?
Head Office Flux, où finit comme dans sa...
Thank you. 80% of customers leave after poor service experience. And lastly, the loss due to poor customer service is close to $62 billion. Apart from the example that we recently experienced, most of the people are looking for messaging over calling. And this is where, if we lay things out on an XY axis, we can look at which is the go-to platform in our customer scenario. If I take query complexity on the x-axis and user experience on the y-axis, IVR is providing a low query complexity response and a low customer experience because there are extended customer waiting times. There are predefined questions, predefined answers. So there is a lack of flexibility and so on and so forth. There is a lack of personalized touch when it comes to an IVR. Whereas with a customer service rep, I can increase the query complexity. However, the customer experience is not always guaranteed because my customer service rep is subject to fatigue. He is subject to emotions. He might not always stick to the script. And there is also the risk of long waiting times. Or if there are multiple internal databases that the customer service rep has to refer to, it might end up in keeping the customer on hold for extended duration of time. Lastly, the traditional chatbots handle a mid-level query complexity and are providing us a marginally better user experience. This is where IBM proposes Watson. Irrespective of query complexity, it provides the most optimal user experience. And the way it does that is very interesting. It is able to replace all the other modes of communication, irrespective of the mode or preference of communication that the customer follows. It takes care of the customer care use case. You can also help with employee productivity or agent assistance. And lastly, conversational commerce. So talking about the challenges or the expectations of customers today, they are expecting answers much faster. They want faster response times. They don't want to be kept on hold or made to wait for a response for too long. And the industry benchmark for any contact center is an average waiting time of 14 minutes. With Watson, you can not only respond to customer queries irrespective of their complexity, you can have Watson interact with your databases to get answers no matter where they reside. It helps with employee productivity, where employees internally have to refer to a lot of information silos, a lot of FAQ sheets. It helps with agent assistance, where agents have to respond to complicated queries and might not always have the answer at the top of their head. They could quickly tap into the knowledge portal of Watson and get responses to those questions. Lastly, Watson helps personalize and tailor make a conversation for the customer. It is able to upsell, cross sell, make recommendations of what kind of a service the customer should prefer. Watson Assistant is an AI powered foundation of smart customer experiences. It follows a very simplified flow where a customer or an employee reaches out omni-channel. It could be via phone, it could be via laptop, it could be via web chat, or even calling. So voice or based chat is then directed to the assistant that has its own set of skills where it can have dialogue in multiple languages. It can give explicit answers to questions that are asked. It can search multiple databases internally. And lastly, it could also provide a seamless handoff a live agent. And this is where the 4 use cases that we spoke of previously fit. We have customer care, we have employee productivity, conversational commerce, and agent assistance. Now, having said that, 84% of employees believe that companies can use AI for their competitive advantage, which goes to show that a lot of people recognize the potential that AI has to transform organizational insight. But 56% of employees aren't confident that their company will be able to use that AI. So while 84% of employees believe that AI is beneficial, 56% of them feel it is going to be a complicated initiative for the organization. And this is where IBM clearly stands out. IBM Watson AI success stories range across industries, where you have Smart Dubai having a Watson based virtual assistant. So we have a federal example where they were able to revolutionize government services delivery. We have Allianz in the BFSI sector that is able to resolve 80% of the most frequent issues that customers present. We also have VMware in the IT and ITES sector that is able to fast track to an expert with intelligent customer support ticket routing. That apart, in India, we have ICMR, which is one of the oldest biomedical research institutions and the apex institution in our fight against COVID, that has also introduced Watson on its website to give quick responses, accurate responses, timely responses to whatever concerns the end users may have. Let's take a few banking examples and understand a bit further. RBS had the challenge of evolving products, processes, and regulations that resulted in a very complicated mortgage procedure. So the agents were unable to understand how to best guide the customer. So their key concern was to improve customer satisfaction while reducing the costs associated. And other major concern was the low net promoter score. This is where the requirement was to have an efficient assistant for employees and customers for mortgages. The benefits that they saw with Watson being introduced was a 20% improvement in NPS, a 10% decrease in call duration, 1,000 responses for 200 customer queries is what Watson was equipped with, and 85% of the overall queries were handled by Cora, which is the persona that they assign to their virtual assistant. We also have the example of Bradesco. Based in Brazil, it is one of the largest and fastest growing banks. They have a geographically distributed structure. It's a hub and spoke model. They have 65 million customers, 50 to 100 branches. And customer experience was an important area for them prior to introducing their business or expanding their operations to an international network of branches. This is where they knew a key challenge for them was the central office being inundated with queries, and therefore there were long waiting times for the inbound calls. They wanted to increase, as a result, the service speed and improve the level of personalization for each customer. And the benefit that they experienced with Watson is after training Watson on 62 products that the bank had, they were able to respond to roughly 300,000 questions a month at an accuracy of 95%. That reduced the time from 10 minutes to merely a few seconds for the responses that customer looking to. And added over months and years, this is a huge amount of productivity that they were able to experience. But it's not just the customers, it's the industry research also that holds good for IBM Watson. Across categories ranging from predictive analytics to machine learning to enterprise insight to conversational computing and even AI text analysis, IBM is a leader through and through, and even IDC says that IBM is number one in AI market share. So if you are not proactive, you would probably result in being reactive when it comes to chatbot adoption. Having said that, I'd like you to see an example in its flesh. With that, I hand it over to Satyajit for an experience of how Watson can serve your business as a virtual agent. Over to you, Satyajit.
Hello, Roscoe. Are you able to listen to me?
Loud and clear, Satyajit.
Okay. I'll just share my content. Please confirm if you are able to see the screen.
It's visible, Satyajit. You can carry.
Okay, thanks. First of all, a very warm welcome to all the audience. I am Satyajit Garewal, working in the data science Veracitiz, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you, and thanks for being with us and watching patiently what we have to offer. Moving forward, I'll directly start with my demonstration. This demonstration would be unlike all the traditional demonstrations which you typically see in the webinars. Here, I don't want to emphasize on the creation and deployment of Watson Assistant. Rather, I want to share an end user experience of using Watson Assistant with you all. Considering the IT folks and some technical geeks present here in the audience panel, I will definitely give a glimpse about the configuration and deployment of the same in the last part of my demonstration. Therefore, for instance, consider myself to be a millennial or any user who would like to consume the services offered by my bank's digital channels. Knowing the fact that the customer service operates within the given office hours and the average turnaround time to solve the customer queries is a lot, which is frustrating and which may ultimately lead me to personally go to the bank and avail the offerings. So, for instance, after I securely log in into the bank's web portal and intend to consume the services offered by it, it's a very tedious task to me to navigate through the bunch of web pages and try to avail the services. Here at the screen's bottom right corner, I see a Lifesaver logo, which is eagerly waiting to help me out. Just a second. So I click on it, and on the chat's home screen, I can see that it has pulled out all the required information for me to initiate the conversation. I can also see it is prompting me with some options which are basically the banking services which it can help. Now, for instance, if I want to pay bills, let's see how the virtual assistant can help me in this case. Therefore, very naturally, if I type I want to pay bill. My credit card. Agent has intelligently detected that I am trying to make a payment via credit card and has taken me to the appropriate dialog flow. Carrying on, if I continue to interact, for example, my card number is 5624 and I want to pay today. Oh, after looking at the credit balance message, what I have realized is my wife shops a lot with this card, and I need to change my PIN before I pay any bill with this card. Therefore, again, naturally, I want to change or start a different conversation between this current conversation. Therefore, let's try and type a different question between the current dialog flow. I want to change the credit card PIN. Hmm. Now, the agent on its own has identified that I have digressed from the current flow and thereby started responding me accordingly. Here, I can change my PIN with a very simple interaction. For example, my current valid PIN is 2024. My new PIN would be 1996. One time passcode is 1234 and done. Okay. So after I complete the change pin process, I can see that it has moved back to the previous conversation seamlessly. Carry on with my credit card recharge payment. So now, for example, if I want to pay $100, yes, done. The impressive part for me over here was I could switch my task and still get the same user experience as if I to any real human agent. Carrying on, what if I'm unsure or I want to input some queries which I'm not able to phrase the sentences for? So, for example, what if I type just a simple word that is pay? In this case, the agent, without taking any action on its own, tries to clarify his understanding and expects me to further elaborate my queries to keep the experience intact. So even when I asked any incomplete question to the agent, my agent was intelligent enough to recognize it and still help me out. The point to be noticed over here was even if people are not sure about what they intend to ask or facing any difficulties to phrase the sentences, the artificial intelligence beneath the agent can still provide customers with the better user experience. Moving further, as we all know that we are well equipped to use the AI platforms and technical devices, we like to use the AI products very naturally. In such cases, we only like to speak what we feel rather than typing all the minute details into the bot. So, for instance, what if I say rather than typing, I want to meet a banker? The agent has an inbuilt capability to recognize voices and still respond to the queries, keeping the same seamless customer experience. The speech to text capability of the agent has been a great help. Similarly, the fact which cannot be denied is the banking services are consumed in all the parts of the geography. And it's a very unrealistic expectation that everyone can query in English or only in one language. Thereby, being comfortable in Hindi as considering Hindi to be my regional language, what if I type using Hindi letters? So, for example, let me try typing I want to meet a banker in Hindi now. So, for example, if I type मैं banker से मिलना चाहता हूँ in Hindi, wow. So, as we saw, the moment I changed the language of my input, the machine learning behind the scenes identified the language and the agent started responding me in the same language. Considering we all like to type very naturally, and as we continuously chat with our friends on social media, we usually don't change the keyboard, rather type naturally in English. Now let's try to type some Hindi statement using the English keyboard. So for example, what I have done earlier was मैं banker से मिलना चाहता हूँ was something written in Hindi. Now let's try the same thing using English keyboard. For example, मैं banker से मिलना चाहता हूँ. The deep learning technologies beneath are showing their results. The agent was still able to capture the language and has kept the experience intact. Just for the information, guys, the agent now supports more than 100 languages, which consist both the global and regionally spoken languages. Now, after we have seen the intelligence of the agent, let's try to outsmart it by asking some irrelevant questions. For example, let's ask the banking agent to come with us to the movies. Hey, I want to go to the movies. The agent is intelligent enough to identify its perimeters and has very smartly tried me to keep my questions stuck to the banking, which means it is not only intelligent to answer the questions but also has the capability to identify which questions it needs to address. Moving on, let's consider for instance I'm not getting the answers as expected and thereby I want some personal human touch, or in any case I get angry. Thereby I say, like, let's for example say, are you mad? You do not understand. Now, the sentiments and tone analyzer capability of the agent activates. And the moment it recognizes the anger threshold has surpassed a particular value, the agent understands it's no longer helpful to the user. But it is still useful as it can directly redirect me to the customer specialist. So as soon as I say yes, the specialist would be there to assist me shortly. Moving forward, what if I ask agent the questions which are not pre-configured or served as service by the agent, which are typically an FAQ based questions or any banking inquiry based questions. So for example, if I choose as general questions categories and type a very vague question, for example, I want to know about financing policies. So I'll just type financing policies. The agent, being equipped with the cognitive search capability, can search the web, the databases, or the unstructured documents to help me find the relevant information. Again, for example, if I type, how does the Islamic banks operate? Let's try with this example. Oh, okay, so I made a spelling mistake over here. Sorry, guys. How does the Islamic banks operate? As you can see, with smart document understanding and natural language processing, Watson Discovery gets really powerful when integrated with Watson Assistant. Which means, unlike any traditional chatbot which needs configuration for every single dialogue, Watson stands on the other side of the spectrum. We can ingest totally unstructured documents into the discovery and it gets trained on its own. Same service can be availed by the employees where they need to put their queries into the agent, and rather than searching the whole database systems manually, Watson Discovery can save their millions worth time. Now that I have been known, like it's a very helpful medium for both the users and employees to avail the services, the very true fact which still resides is more than a 60% of the traffic on the internet is via smartphones and the other IoT devices. Hence, for that matter, it's a very tedious task for the user to navigate to the web portal via phone and make use of the assistant. And there's where the Watson Assistant wins the heart. With a very simple configuration, you can easily make use of WhatsApp to communicate with the agent and get the same experience regardless of the platform it's being used on. So for example, now let's try to communicate to the Watson Assistant via WhatsApp. So just by placing a simple interactive messages, I can see that very easily it is available on WhatsApp with the same user experience I was getting on the web chat. So for example, now tentatively, if I would ask a simple natural questions like, I want to apply for a loan. It is seen that like it is able to still serve me with the same user experience as if it was giving on to the web portal. Moving forward, as we are now on the last part of my demonstration, I'll be quickly showing you how Watson Assistant follows a zero coding USP, and with only few configurations one can develop it. So now I'm on the screen of IBM Cloud Watson Assistant console, wherein I can see that these are the skills which I have developed for Watson Assistant. Talking about the banking, which I had shown you, so I'll just explain you with this skill. I can see that it has pulled out all the required information, and on the left side, top left side of the screen, it is giving me with some predefined functionalities, which are intents, entities, dialogues, options, etc. An intent is the user intention, or in simple terms, you can call them a task which you want your assistant to perform. So, for example, as we saw a example of appointment booking, I can see there would be any like appointment intent listed over here. So, if a user type, "Can I meet you tomorrow?" the user intent is to make an appointment. Therefore, we have trained it with some examples, and Watson Assistant has done the rest of the part. So as soon as user gives any examples which are relevant to these examples which we have trained it on, Watson Assistant will map that question or query to a particular intent, which would be make appointment. Moving further, talking about entities modify an intent. For example, if a user type, "Can I meet you tomorrow?" the entities over here would be tomorrow. Entities are given a name such as date, time, card type, or etc. In simple terms, they help in collecting the relevant information while processing the dialogues. In some cases, they are also referred to as the slots, like they collect the information piece by piece while processing the dialogues. Now, moving forward to the dialogue section, you can see that dialogues are like in the very layman's term, dialogues are nothing but the responses or replies which we want our assistant to respond with. So, for example, I can see that if, the moment I just type bank on WhatsApp, I can see just by clicking over here that I have created an intent over here and configured a dialogue, which is "That's great to know you are interested in WhatsApp banking. Please enter your registered 10-digit mobile number." So in this case, we configure our dialogues and those becomes actual replies of the assistant. Moving forward, least but not the least, we have catalog, content catalog, where I can see it has all the skills with respect to different industry jargon. And just by adding a specific skill, we can make it industry specific. For example, if I select customer care, I can make my agent train to the customer care activities very easily. Thanks for watching this demo, and over to you, Roscoe. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Satyajit. Once again, thanks, Satyajit, for that wonderful demo. There's a lot of functionalities that you covered in that. And you also showed us how Watson works under the hood. So I'll just quickly do a recap for the benefit of everyone. There's a host of functionalities that we saw through this example of Satyajit's user experience demo, where he digressed from asking about his credit card to changing his PIN, and Watson was able to successfully come back into the conversation and even request for payment against the credit card. There was disambiguation. So apart from the conversation that Satyajit had with the assistant, there were multiple times when there were spelling errors, where there were sequential words, or rather words not placed in the right sequence while typing, and Watson was yet able to understand that. There was also further disambiguation by way of Watson probing what exactly is it when a particular word is not able to be understood by it. Where in Satyajit's example, he just said pay, and Watson was able to effectively ask or cross question, "What do you want me to speak regarding when you say pay?" There was also, I believe, speech to text was excluded in this particular example, but this is a functionality that comes pre-configured along with Watson. There was language translation that was conducted where, in this example, although we took Hindi as a regional language, we have the a facility and functionality to translate French as well, voice as well as chat. Tone analyzer is something that was employed by way of the virtual assistant understanding that the customer is having a bit of a temper and offering to hand it off to an agent for a live chat. We also saw the omni-channel functionality where we not only spoke on a web chat interface but also via WhatsApp. And the benefit of Watson is really you can also integrate this with your service desks such as Jira, Zendesk, Zoho, with your social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and lastly your web and voice chat as well. So irrespective of where your customer is preferring to have a conversation with you, you can be present over there. You can rather be omnipresent. Next, wherever you are not specifically training Watson to have a dialogue with the customer, there is the flexibility to have cognitive search and smart document understanding, where you just ingest those documents into an extension of the virtual assistant called as Discovery, that breaks down those documents into a smart understanding along with a cognitive search capability where it indexes all of those results. So wherever Watson does not explicitly have an answer, it will reach out to the documents and process thousands of tens of thousands of documents in real time. Lastly, we also saw the configuration, how simple it is to process a dialogue. It's a simple UI. It's a user-friendly dashboard that you can use. It's a non-coding environment. It also provides certain analytics by way of showing how many users you interacted with, how many messages were part of one conversation, how many conversations did a particular user have over the course of a month, and so on and so forth. And this brings me to the end, and we are open for Q&A. As I mentioned on chat, you can please feel free to ask us any questions. I have a few that are coming into me one-on-one, and I will take that up as we go. So the first question that we have is, will this chatbot work for me out of the box? And Satyajit, I will take up this one. My answer here is Watson is very quick to scale. It's a very simple non-coding interface. It comes pre-configured with industry jargon for multiple industries, and banking specifically has a skill that the virtual agent is already trained for. So what you have to effectively train the virtual assistant is only with business specific or organization specific terminology and processes and FAQs and documents. But the way it helps is because it's available as a cloud as well as on-premise offering. If you go with the cloud offering, your time to value is much faster. There's low capital investment upfront, and it's quick to scale. So to that extent, yes, Watson works out of the box. There's a lot of out of the box functionality, but to customize the virtual agent to suit your organization's persona, that takes a limited amount of initial investment, after which the virtual agent just does the work itself. In one of the examples we spoke about today, the bank was able to service 280,000 queries approximately on a monthly basis with 95% accuracy. So, and there's the sky is the limit with this virtual agent. And I hope that answers the question. The next question that we have is, how quickly can Watson be trained to understand industry specific jargon? I think we took that up in the first question itself, so I will not repeat that. The next question is, how many languages are supported by Watson? Satyajit, maybe you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So Watson Assistant by default supports all the majorly globally spoken languages, which can be like Arabic, English, French, Spanish. But the upper hand which Watson Assistant has is the capability to integrate it with the external APIs. So you can integrate it with the n number of APIs to support the n number of languages. So for example, as I showed you in the demonstration, we had connected with the IBM language support language translation API, and via which we are able to support more than 100 languages in this virtual agent.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Satyajit, for that answer. The next question that we have is this an expensive solution to implement? And what I'd like to do is take up an example over here. Let's say you have an organization with 10,000 customers. Let's say on a monthly basis, only 20% of these customers reach out to you. So that's 2,000 customers a month. Let's say that if they end up calling you, they would take 3 minutes time. So that's roughly 6,000 minutes or 10 hours. And the benchmark, my bad, it's 100 hours. And let's take the industry benchmark, the lowest benchmark rather, of $10 an hour being the cost of a contact center agent. So that would amount to $1,000 a month. Now, if I talk about Watson, the standard offering or the standard price point is $120 per month per 1,000 users, which in this example would amount to $250. So if I'm talking purely about the recurring setup investment, you are saving 75% month on month merely by moving that 2,000 user monthly traffic to Watson. So I hope that answers your question. Needless to say, customization comes with a limited amount of initial investment. But like I said, that's a one-time setup cost. What we also do as part of our engagements is train the end users to own the solution, own the platform themselves. Something like a customer service department internally is usually a champion for customer experience, and therefore we train them to be self-sufficient and reach out to us only if there is any complicated turnaround, complicated integration, which is rarely the case. And we also see that the same virtual assistant can be used for multiple use cases. Uh, for example, you can not only use it for customer service, you can also use it as an internal help desk, where if there are people who are finding it difficult to transition from work from home for work from home and are finding it difficult to understand what are the policies that are in effect or are in force, you can make it an HR help desk. If you think there's a lot of IT tickets because there's a lot of workstations that have to be mobilized to ensure people are effective in working from home, then you can have an IT help desk as well. And again, the sky is the limit. You can have your same virtual assistant trained for multiple use cases, for multiple languages. It can have a personalized response. It can have multiple personas depending on who you're targeting. For example, from a banking perspective, you can have it have a different flow of conversation if the customer is a millennial versus a different flow of conversation, a more sophisticated, mature conversation if the end user or the customer is a baby boomer. So depending on the generation that is interacting with your virtual assistant, you can customize that conversation, which is not really the case. And you restrict the flexibility when you are depending solely on a contact center, where you have multiple challenges. There's long wait times. You cannot train an agent to speak a new language overnight, whereas with Watson, you have 100 plus languages out of the box. You cannot have the flexibility to work 24/7 because the amount of hours that your contact center is expected to support is directly proportional with the number of agents. So your cost goes up exponentially. Whereas with a virtual agent like Watson, you can scale up and scale down depending on the usage. So if, for example, in a particular month, you scale up to 10,000 users, you are charged a little higher price for that month, $120 per 1,000 users. So you do the math. And if, say, for example, the next month you have only 500 people or 750 people reaching out, then your cost scales down effectively. So it's a very price effective offering along with the convenience of being available 24/7. It provides highly accurate answers. It's timely to respond. You can have a customized persona and a personalized conversation. So I hope that answers the question. The next question that we have is, can we set up the Watson Assistant with all the functionality that you showed ourselves? So, Satyajit, maybe you want to take this up?
Yes. So, yes, of course, we can set it up. So, as I have mentioned earlier in my demonstration, that Watson Assistant owns a USP of zero coding. So, even if the developer is non-computer background or he has no prior knowledge to the programming, he can very easily navigate through the Watson tool, intents, the entities, and the dialogues very easily. Talking about deployment, it gives you a various out-of-the-box integrations availability. It can integrate with Facebook, it can integrate with the Slack bot, and even if even with the your web applications or your websites very easily out of the box. So it's not like a necessary requirement that one needs to have a prior programming knowledge to use this tool. I hope that answers this question.
Perfect. I think it does. Thanks, Satyajit. So we have a question, and it says, "What is the security to verify the customer prior to providing balances and payment services?" So Satyajit, I will initiate the response over here, and you can probably take up from where I leave off.
Okay.
And my sense is that in this particular example, although that is an item that we took as a given, we presumed that the customer has already validated and verified himself. However, Watson is provides a highly sophisticated and simple technique to integrate with multiple databases. So the go-to platform I would say is T24. There are multiple APIs that are available for integration with multiple databases, and Watson can effectively verify a customer based on whatever platforms you're using. Maybe it could be a Salesforce, there is a direct integration possible. Maybe there is another internal database, maybe it's something that's in-house. And as long as it can be integrated via an API, Watson could include that as one of the steps to authorize or authenticate or verify the customer prior to giving them access to their accounts and to other services. And in our example, that is where the customer's credit card information was available because it was presumed that the customer had provided his validation or validated his credentials. Satyajit, maybe you can elaborate on that further.
Correct. So very easily it gets integrated with the different systems. So because I have told like earlier I mentioned that it has an REST API endpoint, you can integrate it with any n number of systems for the authorization and the security perspective. So for example, if a customer intends to keep the assistant or the assistant system beneath the firewalls, it's very easily doable. So for example, if a banking system wants to integrate it with the two-factor authentication, or for example he wants to authenticate the user, the first level of utterance would be via the Sparrow or the authorized systems. And there, like, because the whole of the IBM cloud system is a microservice offering, you can like easily integrate and channelize those architecture according to the authorization systems which are like existing thoroughly into the bank. Like currently, whatever security you are following, it can very easily follow that.
Perfect. All right. Any other questions? I think we've answered all the outstanding questions. If there are none, I would like to close this webinar. I'd like to thank each one of you for attending, our partners, Hyperdist and Superdist, for enabling this webinar for us. Thank you very much, everyone. On behalf of Veracitiz, we'd like to be a trusted advisor for your Finalytics journey as well. And if there's any questions whatsoever, even beyond this webinar, please feel free to reach out to us, and we hope to give you the best of our services and the best of our help at all times. Until next time, this is Roscoe Lobo along with Satyajit Garewal signing off. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.